Welcome to Stroller Coaster, the podcast that takes you on the wild ride of parenting that we're all on together, created by Munchkin, from game-changing sippy cups to award-winning diaper pails and everything in between. They're the most loved baby lifestyle brand in the world. I'm Lynn Smith, and as always, I have my co-host Justin with me today. Hi, Justin.
Hello.
All right, let's get right to it. I'm so glad we're digging into this because my boys have gotten into art in such a big way. I see especially my big one. He seems to connect to it in new ways, and I'm really interested in how I can get my younger one as interested. So I'm excited to talk to our guest today.
I'm sure it'll come along if the big siblings getting into some heavy painting period, getting into the Picasso blue period.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course, it's going to follow suit. They've been really into fashion sort of drawing. A lot of dresses, a lot of hot new looks. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly.
I have no idea what that is, but is that a girl dad
looks
thing?
No, looks like new fashion looks.
Oh my gosh, I'm
LEWKS.
so not a millennial. That just showed my age.
Wow, we'll have to delete that. Plus, of course, my kids do ballet, and in our household, the fine art of podcasting, which is going on right now.
And it's also neat because this is messy. It does not have to be perfect. This is all about teaching our kids how to get in there, get creative, get their minds working in a new way. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into the arts. I'm really looking forward to talking to Dr. Gai Lindsay. She's been working with kids in the arts for over 2 decades. She was a preschool teacher, a university professor, and early childhood consultant. She has an amazing understanding over how the visual arts affect our kids. So I'm excited to hear that. And then later on, we have an inspiring story of how a mother and her daughter connected over music at one of the most amazing venues in the world, Carnegie Hall. So let's get artistic. Gai, I'm so excited to talk about this with you because you've spent your entire career working with children. I'd love to, if you could paint a picture for us of a moment when a child realizes that they have this gift, that they're an artist of sorts.
I'd love to. I once worked with a little girl who was new to the preschool where I was teaching, and she was one of those little people who stand back and observe. She wouldn't speak to other children. She was really, really cautious. And at the time we were exploring monoprinting and using charcoal as part of the process. She was watching the other children really intently for literally a couple of weeks. And every time she'd wander over to the art studio, I'd say to her, "Do you want to go? Do you want to have a try today?" And she would shake her head and sort of back off and keep observing. And then on this one day, she nodded at me and off she went. And I've got the most beautiful photos of this little person who all of a sudden seemed to understand that her voice was valued, that she could just release herself into the play with these beautiful, rich black marks. And it was like turning a corner for her. It was quite remarkable. From that day onwards, she became verbal, she became more social. So it was quite remarkable.
It really is, because it reminds us art really does affect children in a way maybe they can't understand. How does it affect them? What have you seen in all of your years working with kids?
I see them realising that they matter, and that there are ways to express themselves that don't rely on verbal responses. With art, as we all know, there's no wrong answers. It's not a test that they're sitting where they have to achieve, or it shouldn't be like a test. Whereas when they're playing with arts materials, and children are so free with that process, then they're really just immersing themselves in a dialogue with materials and building a relationship with materials. Children aren't limited to being in relationships just with people. Well, in fact, human beings aren't limited to just being in relationships with people. We all have relationships with materials and places, sounds, emotions, feelings. And the arts are like a conduit for all of those things. They give us a pathway into wondering about the world, expressing our thinking about the world, learning about other people's ideas, and then just the delight of the play with those materials.
And I know you mentioned specifically with the material of charcoal. Why charcoal?
It's one of my very favourite materials to introduce to children because it makes the richest, blackest mark with very little pressure required to apply it to the page. So I really enjoy working with babies with the charcoal.
When you say babies, what age are you talking about?
As soon as a baby can hold the charcoal, but in fact I'd introduce babies to art earlier than that. I have a colleague and she does some wonderful work with babies, taking them to the gallery where they really immerse themselves in the work of an artist.
Justin, that's such a good question because I would have never, when I was in the newborn or even in the early baby days, thought, let's put the materials in their hands. Is this a really silly question, but isn't it permanent? Isn't it like if I'm going to play with charcoal in my house, is this going to get everywhere and my hands are going to be black?
No. And a lot of people don't realise that charcoal is non-toxic. So that's why you can give it to your youngest children. It does get on your face. You need to have the wet wipes nearby if you're worried about smudges.
You need to not be OCD like me, a clean freak.
Yeah, exactly. I once... At my university, there's a children's discovery space, and one time my students were introducing charcoal to the children, and this little girl was just completely immersed in the process. And her grandma was watching her. And then all of a sudden her mum swooped in, grabbed her daughter's hands and pulled them off the paper and went, "Oh my gosh, Mum, she's so dirty. And get the wet wipes." And it was just such a heartbreaking moment for me, really, because I thought, oh, what message are you sending your little girl about her immersion in this amazing process and you're worrying about the mess?
Yeah, that's such an important point. Like, what advice do you have for parents that might feel like, I don't want glitter all over my house. I don't want charcoal all over their face. What do you say to those parents that are going to be like the wet wipe mom?
For those families, I would just try and highlight how important the freedom of that moment is for your children. We control every moment of our children's days, and what's, I think, most risky is sending them the message that that messiness is a problem, because we're actually just transferring our own hang-ups onto children when we send those messages. So when we're playing alongside our children with art materials, what we're sending is a message that I value this learning, I value this process, I value you, and what can we learn together? And that's so much more embracing and enriching for a child than the constant, don't get dirty, don't make a mess.
As they get older, we are such a results culture, right? We're such an outcome, like, that's so beautiful, that looks so great. How do we make it so that our children feel like this is not the outcome, but the experience that gives them the most fulfillment?
Mostly with art, we think of the product. We think of that item that either hangs on the gallery wall or in the case of children's work, the things we stick on the fridge. The process is when we're really thinking about all of the ways we get to that end product. How do we pick up the material? How do we apply the material? Because if we get too hung up on the product, what it tells them is that they're not good enough. It tells them that they're not capable. It tells them that they're not ready.
I love that for everything that our children do, from sports to arts to even, schoolwork. Describe for me a little bit about what it is that children respond to when we as the parents or adults see their work and respond to what they've done.
As human beings, we want to be adored and praised and affirmed. But if the feedback we give children about the work they're doing or their play or their artwork or whatever it is all about something that's quite ambiguous, it doesn't give children anything to build on or aim for. Whereas when we say things like, I can see you worked really hard, or I love that shade of pink, or I can see that when you're drawing people, you're adding lots and lots of details. If you know it's a person, it's actually really risky to sort of identify what the object of a child's artwork is and guess, oh, I love your truck. And they go, that's not a truck.
That's a dinosaur.
You know?
Yeah.
That's
happened to me before, yeah.
I think the way we praise children should be more specific, and it should focus on their dispositions. It should focus on their effort, their hard work, their persistence.
Art is really big in our house. It always has been. You can see the Little Riders artwork back here. And it actually re-entered our lives in a new way that reminds me to share with the audience this short, quick story. I was at a nail salon and I was sitting next to a woman, and it turns out she's a former art teacher. And so I said, have you ever considered doing private lessons? And she's been now teaching my son for 6 months. Every week he goes, and his projects have become such a source of peace and passion for him. He comes and shares. I've seen a transformation in him. Why is this? I know art can be therapeutic, but what do you think it is about this that can be so impactful for children?
Yeah, I'm so pleased you've brought that up, because earlier when I was speaking about the value of engaging in the arts, something I didn't remember to say is that the relationship with a teacher or a parent is actually a really important ingredient in children's learning about art.
Right. They have a relationship. She said, we're friends. he talks to her about stuff. So you're right. This relationship is really key.
Yeah, it opens up a dialogue. And, as the adult, it's that opportunity to partner with the child in their learning. And it's a fine, delicate dance. It's not taking over. It's not showing them how to do it. It's actually a process of co-learning. And I'd say that's what's happening between Ryder and his art teacher.
One of the things that I've noticed in art with both of my children is the frustration that can come from perfectionism. How do we help children through this is terrible, they're frustrated, I'm not good at this? How do we help them to overcome that and realize more about the process?
Yeah, it's such a big problem in our society, isn't it? That even from the youngest age, children are starting to feel evaluated and assessed and judged, and for some of them, never feeling like they quite measure up. So we shouldn't be putting art materials on a table and walking away. It should actually be about that relationship, that dialogue, that co-learning, as I said earlier.
This is an opportunity for us to become artists in the same way it's an opportunity for our children to become artists, because I don't fancy myself an artist. But sitting down and even just getting messy with our kids, Gai.
Yeah.
It's so it's such a bonding experience. Can you describe for us what some of those different activities can be for different ages?
Any materials you have in your home can be really a place for play and exploration. So you don't need to go out and buy expensive equipment. So as we said earlier, charcoal's a great material, but if you don't have that, a really lovely thick black felt pen on the back of some cardboard packaging that you get from Amazon. Other things you can do at home, of course, are the watercolour paints. I would encourage people to buy a better paintbrush than what's provided with those little watercolour paint sets, because they're often really cheap and nasty.
The bristles just pop off instantly. You have just a stick.
None of us want to apply paint with a stick.
You also finally say that art creates resilience in our children. And I really love that, because if there's any skill I hope to instill in my kids, it's resilience. They're going to face a lot. How does art do that?
You think about the process an artist goes through to perfect their craft. And look, I'm not saying every child should be what I call a big A artist, those people who hang their work on the gallery wall who make a living out of being an artist. I want everyone on the planet to reconnect with their little A artist, the part of their humanity that wants to express ideas and play with materials and immerse themselves in those really beautiful processes. And the reason that builds resilience is because to make an artwork is hard, actually. A lot of people think you're either artistic or not, but being artistic is like any other skill that we learn. It takes time, it takes practice, it takes repeated opportunities to work with materials. And so the resilience comes from working through the problems, and it also comes through your efforts being valued and accepted for what they are rather than for what they will be in the future.
Gai, this has been such an insightful conversation and inspiring to just get our kids out there, have them get their hands dirty and get their creative mind and juices flowing. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Yeah, and get off to the gallery and be inspired.
You know, Justin, as parents, like we have crayons in our purse or we have crayons in the car and we're like, oh, here's a piece of paper, color on it. What I took away from that is, wow, this actually really developmentally is a huge impact on our children. We need to be thinking about this differently and starting this way sooner.
And what I want to know is, am I the best at podcasting, Lynn? Am I doing am I doing a good job?
Was that
this is my art
comment? This is your art. Justin, tell me about those high chair days. You remember that?
Oh, of course. My kids were actually really advanced at taking their food and making an absolutely massive mess. So cleaning up the high chair was a full-time job for me, essentially.
I remember that too. Well, if you're in the same situation as Justin, you need the Float High Chair from Munchkin. It's compact and foldable for easy storage. It comes in black and white. And most importantly, it's easy to clean with smooth, wipeable surfaces and no nooks and crannies for all those food pieces to get stuck in.
The crannies, they keep me up nights, Lynn.
It is real. It's real. So if you want one, you can go to the link in the show description to see for yourself and get a discount with the code PODCAST. We talk a lot on this podcast about how we can connect with our kids, not just as a parent and child, but to really connect. And the arts, specifically music, can help bridge this gap across generations. It's really powerful. It happened for Quiana and her daughter, Kamira, in an amazing way, in an amazing place. They connected over music at Carnegie Hall. Here is Fleece, our correspondent, with the parenting story of the day.
You brought such purpose to my life.
Okay.
Yeah. You're gonna do some awesome things.
Okay.
I'm overwhelmed by all.
Quiana is the mother of 3-year-old Kamira living in New York City.
I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. My family, which includes my husband, Kamani, and our 3-year-old, Kamira. Kamira is what we would call a pandemic baby, right? She was born at a time where lots of things were shut down. And then when she turned about 1, that's when things started to open up a bit. And we needed something to get outside and actually interact with people.
Like all parents, Quiana struggles to find balance in her life.
You know, it's not easy juggling work life and home life. Parent guilt sets in, and you really strive to have those moments of connection with your child, and you want to be there for them.
Then out of nowhere, she chanced upon something that would change her and Kamira's life.
We found out about a program called Big Note, Little Note, which was sponsored by Carnegie Hall. It's all surrounded about music, but it's like music for emotion, music for play, music for learning.
Getting involved in music was huge for Kamira, but it also had a big effect on Quiana.
I'm the big note, Kamira's the little note. And the program is really built around having that connection between her and I. It's geared toward little note Kamira, but also has an impact on me as the big note. It's been really amazing to sort of nurture my own love of music, even though I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, and lived in New York all of my life. Before this program, I had never been to Carnegie Hall. And it's been an amazing opportunity to even broaden my own experiences and be able to witness Kamira experience it.
This music program has changed Quiana's and Kamira's lives in so many profound ways.
Her connection to music was instantaneous. I truly believe that this has opened her up in a way to her learning like nothing else before. She started developing her speech so much faster. She developed the love of reading because a lot of her books sounded like music to her. There are times where I know Kamira is starting to get antsy and fussy, and so I'll just throw on some music and just have an impromptu dance party. There are other times where Kamira is being really defiant about, let's say, washing her hands. And so a song will help break that defiance down a little bit, where we can just be like, hey, we're gonna wash our hands. Hey, we're gonna wash our hands. Hey, and we'll just throw out lyrics, however it works, whatever kind of mood we're in. And it works. It gets her to move along and do what she needs to do.
Music has created a bond between Quiana and Kamira that goes beyond their everyday routine.
And a lot of other times when I'm parenting Kamira, I'm the mom and she's the daughter, and there's very clear boundaries around that. But when we're singing together, when being creative in music together, we're a team and we're on the same level, and we can really connect in ways that aren't quite there when we're parent and child. So I highly recommend to use music as a way to connect with your child. You can try learning a new instrument together, or you could just sing and dance in your own living room. It really doesn't matter. It's just more about the bond that you feel through music when you can connect on the same level with your child in a new way that you probably wouldn't have imagined before.
Through Big Note, Little Note, Quiana and Kamira were actually able to create their own piece of music.
We were able to work with a musician to write and record our own song. And it was an amazing experience. The song really became the snapshot of a moment in her life that we can hold on to forever.
Okay.
You brought such purpose to my life.
Okay.
Yeah. You're gonna do some awesome things.
Okay.
I'm overwhelmed by all the joy you bring.
Okay.
We're so blessed to be together. Got that black girl magic that will stay with you forever. Kamira made it up. Kamira made it down.
Kamira made it.
Kamira made it down. Kamira made it up. Kamira made it down. Okay.
You know, Justin, what's really amazing, and I hope and I imagine that Quiana experienced this with her daughter, is when you watch your children experience the arts. Like being in Carnegie Hall, which if anyone's been to Europe and been to Carnegie Hall, it's just spectacular. But watching your child see that, I took my sons to a Broadway show for the first time. And I took more time, I think, turning over and looking at them to see them experience live theater for the first time than I did watching the show. And it's so powerful because you can see in their faces that they're just like, whoa, this is incredible.
And I think the arts do that. It just breaks out the sort of barriers in the parent-child relationship where you're sort of all on even ground taking in this music or art or a show or anything. It's amazing.
It's what I've really learned in this episode is to not be thinking about the product, the end product of what you're putting in the frame, but the process, how we can get involved with our children and go through the process with them, and how that unites us, how that bonds us, and how we can get our children to be more excited about that process so that they can have all of those things in their mind that are growing and flourishing because of it, and how they can really get into it with us. It's that bonding that Quiana and her daughter experience that we can do every single day.
It's so true. There's so few things as a parent you can really collaborate with your kid on. For as much as they're helping you cook dinner, it's well, they can't use a knife or touch the stove or whatever. But with art, you're all on even ground.
And that's the show for today. I'm so happy that we could bring some art into your children's lives. I just want to thank Dr. Lindsay for her experience. I've been so inspired by this episode. And also thank you to Quiana and Kamira for sharing that really inspiring story. Thank you also to Munchkin for making this podcast possible. And you can see all of their products on their website at munchkin.com.
And I want to say, hey, everyone, go check out our podcast for kids called Storytime. It's got great stories, improv actors, funny sounds. It's a great thing to do with your kids.
Oh, our kids love it.
Yeah, it's right here in the same feed. Look for Stroller Coaster Storytime.
Munchkin invites you to help plant 1 million trees a year. Since 2016, Munchkin has planted over 5 million sproutlings in some of the most impoverished countries through their partnership with Trees for the Future. Together, they're on a mission to reduce C20 in the atmosphere, 1 million saplings at a time. And now, we want to send you off with a little love, your moment of calm, a respite from all of your fun parenting to-dos, right? Well, speaking of trees, today we're exploring the Amazon rainforest, home to jaguars and pink river dolphins. So sit back, feel the warm tropical air as you relax to the gentle rainfall. Enjoy.